How's it going, everybody? This is Aiden with Father's Land Surveying, coming back at you guys with another video explaining to you guys what is a record of survey. What is a record of survey? Why do we need it? Why does it cost so much? And why is it so hard? Why does it take so long to file? Okay, let's jump into it. So you can see on my screen here, I'm just going through the Marin County records here. This is RS 2022. I'm just showing you guys a wide variety. That's the first one that popped up. It just so happens to be Ford. Um, so let's answer the first question. What is a record of survey? So a record of survey is a map. As you can see here, it's 18 by 26, 18 inches by 26 long, and it's a map that basically describes, shows, explains how you are defining someone's boundary lines slash property lines. Um, so in this case, I haven't looked at this before. I'm just looking at it right now. He's got a basis of bearings here. This is where he gets his angles from, right? The basis of his starting angles, and it's a bearing. Uh, and he starts here, and for whatever reason he's got this angle here, and he creates his own um, basis here. This is a record. This R2 and R4, these are previous records. All right, these are records he's using. This R2, record of survey 2018 maps 194. R4, record of survey 2021 maps 89. So he's referencing those, and he's showing the common lines and also common bearings and distances from these records. Basically, that's required. That shows that he has analyzed these and he's seen these, how these other surveyors has resolved these, and he is placing them on his map. And that is required to show how you resolve these. What is your measurements between these? And as measurements get better and better, in the early let's say around the 1990s, in the 70s, let's say shoot, let's say from the 60s to the 90s, or the late 80s, most of the surveying was done with a steel tape and a plumb bob to keep it perfectly horizontal, um, as much as they possibly could. And they would account for sagging of the tape. Um, like, for example, it would be like a power pole, two power poles really far apart. There's always going to be a sag in between them there. So they would measure between 2 points using plumb bob and a steel tape. So there's errors in that. There's inaccuracies in that. So now after the 1990s, the electric distance meters came out. The EDMs came out. They were this big, bulky pieces of equipment, very heavy, large. They would measure distances using infrared laser that would measure sine waves, how many sine waves it took to get from a prism, a glass, it's like a glass type prism. How long does it take it for it to measure that prism and bounce back? And it measures the sine waves and calculates the distance. And then they would use, let's go back to the early years. So for angles, they would use something called the theodolite. The theodolite it measured angles. Um, so these guys back then had tools, the best tools at the time, and so that's how they did these surveys historically. Now, fast forward to this era, now we have electric distance meters, and electronic means of measuring angles. And that instrument is called a total station. It's called a total station. So now we have total stations, and now we have GNSS receivers, Global Navigation Satellite System receivers that measure 30 something satellites. They used to measure only like 8 or 10. Four back in the days, 3 or 4 if you're lucky. Uh, you would need it to get a good solution. So the point is as time goes on, measurements get better and they get more accurate, and so that's why he's got these numbers here. Um, they're different from the historical numbers. So he's coming off here, and then he's got a tie to a railroad spike here. These are boundary monuments that are found in the field. Okay, so so that is what a record of survey is. It is showing the public and everyone what boundary monuments you used, how you measured between them compared to the historical data, and basically the method of your resolution. How are you determining the proper boundary based on the grant deed, based on the conveyance, whether it is a lot and block description or whether it is a grant deed by meets and bounds. Um, so that is what a record of survey is, and it's a nice map. Again, it shows your record and measured distances and your resolution. All right. So now that I've explained that, let me, as I feel like it's a good segue, I was already getting into it, to show you guys the difficulties in the job of the surveyor in the field. This comes up a lot. They always ask, look at this, for example. Let's say we're surveying this property here. Let's say we drive all the way over here down this road, put our GPS receiver on here. Let's say we put our GPS receiver on these two, and then a property owner over here comes up on this property owner for this parcel here comes up and says, "Hey, what are you guys doing here?" And we say, "Oh, we're doing a survey," and they say for who? They demand to know for who. And you say, "Oh, uh, parcel up the way over there." They go, "Where up the way?" And you give them the address, and you tell them to go. Yeah, you can go talk to my client. And they say, "Well, what does that got to do with my property over here?" And a lot of times I just sigh because um, uh, I'm impatient and I don't have all the time in the world. And as much as I would love to sit down and have a cup of coffee and explain everything to the property owner in the best possible way that they can understand every single thing I'm saying in layman's terms, I sigh because um, I'm a little busy and I would rather not explain to you every single thing, but I give them a reason such as, well, we need to find as many boundary points as we can to resolve the boundaries. Sometimes that leads to more questions and more answers, etc., etc. But the reason why we're way over here is that reason that I said, in that we need to establish something. We need to find some boundary monuments in the ground that have already been placed by previous surveyors that would allow us to define boundaries in the area, so we can therefore use um, proper boundary methods and boundary principles, legal boundary principles, to be able to calculate back using math and holding, whether he's holding um, record dimensions, record distances or record interior angles, to be able to calculate back and to place and resolve the client's boundary there. Um, and so that's the reason why what we're doing way over there on someone else's property. And it's also the difficulty of the surveyor. We have to go So he looks like he tried to search for this brass tag on the fence, didn't find it, didn't find this rebar. This was an Oglesby survey. It's an ancient survey from, like, I don't know, the 20s on to the 40s and 50s, 60s maybe. Didn't find anything. He found a rebar, half inch rebar for 7744. He calling that off foot and 1.06 and 3838 offline for whatever reason. He's showing the fence here. Fence is over by 10 feet. That's from my previous video. I talked about contractors and architects doing these plot plans from the fences. And I've had a question, people ask me, how far is our fences from the property lines? Well, it all depends on where you're located. This is Marin County's notorious. Oops, Marin County's notorious for having very difficult boundaries to survey. Fences don't always line up. So they do a little bit back here, make a little bit of sense here. This one drifted. This one's kind of on the money here for whatever reason. All right, so that's the difficulty. Um, that's why it costs so much. Look, he even went all the way out here. He did all this research for this Hull and Lockett. These are private survey records that you can get for historical surveys they were for private clients, and they weren't necessarily filed in the public record with the county recorder. They were done for clients and given to the clients, and the clients took it. And obviously the surveyor did a great job in keeping these records, and these records have been indexed um, by Dave Contreras, and you can contact him and he can give you these surveys. And in some cases these will hold. These are original surveys. You could say, you can make an argument that this was this first surveyor out here, and this is what people have acquiesced to, and this is what people have built upon. This guy did a survey, and then maybe this guy piggybacked off this survey and put his fences over here and put his fences over here, and then this guy piggybacked off this guy, and so that's how the block might have got defined, and um, so it's pretty essential to find these because that's all we got out there. What else are you going to go off of if there's no original evidence out there? So that's why that answers the question why it's so hard, and why it costs so much. We have to do all this digging. We got to do several days of field. We got to pay our field crews. So time to go out there, and a lot of the time this is all under trees. This could all be under full of trees. You can't just do GNSS. You got to go all the way over here, traverse, and the right practice would be to close your loop at least. And so I'm not sure how Ford got this, but maybe was able to get clear skies, and he popped this guy in here, and it's only couple inches, couple 3 inches off here. Um, so that's why it costs so much. Is first of all, it's the preparation, it's the research, it is the boundary searching. Then it comes the resolution. Surveyors pull their hair out trying to figure out how in the world am I going to resolve this thing. Okay, then you got hours and hours of resolution, and the clients they get you under the gun, and you got 2 or 3 or 4 of these to go, and it's a very difficult process. These things can go to court. There's a lot of legal implications whether you're doing it the right thing. Okay, so not only comes the resolution, um, now it comes the map preparation. You got to make it look good. You have to make sure all your text looks good. All your text is legible. So you even took the time to do a resolution notes. You got to put every single thing on here is done by the surveyor. Nobody else does it for them. Surveyor's got to put all this stuff here, and the county recorder just comes and signs this. County surveyor comes and just signs this, fills this out, um, and it gets filed with the recorder. So I think that about does it and answers all the questions on what is a record of survey, um, um, Why does it cost so much? Why is it so difficult? Why does it take so long? That's why it takes long, because we got to juggle all these field crew days with this current schedule of surveyor. Then and then we got to go set the corners, right? We go back and set these property corners, wherever they can. Didn't set this corner because there's some dense bamboo there. Maybe the client didn't want them to cut it all out. That would maybe that would have cost about 2 hours extra for his crew to chop all that bamboo down with a machete, uh, because you need line of sight in a total station. You need to be able to see. Keep in mind that it's almost similar to taking a string line from one point to the next. You can't string line from one point to the next if there's a giant wall in the way. Can't do that. It's similar to surveying. You need, with a total station, you need a line of sight. You need to be able to see directly the prism to measure a point, and then you swap, and then you can keep basically piggybacking off of that line, kind of like a daisy chain. Think of a daisy chain. You keep chaining, um, and so that's why it takes so long. That's why it costs so much. And actually, so let's talk about when a record of survey is required. Record of survey is required based on, let's look at this here. Bear with me a second. I'm going to pause this video. Okay, guys, coming back in, telling you again when a record of survey is required. And I just want to show you guys real quick a survey that I did in Sebastopol. Shows you also the complexities. This one was a fun one. I had to dig. Um, I had to dig about 1.7 feet, almost 2 feet, 2 feet down in the middle of a road if you're here in Sebastopol, California. Right in the middle of a road. And, this one was probably 2 or 3 feet, 2 or 3 feet down there. I just tied it with a metal detector sounding. I wasn't going to dig that up. I had to need a jackhammer, and people were going crazy on this, flying down this road here. um, so again, it shows you the complexities and the reason. Look at this map. You got to make all these notes, and it is a time-consuming process. So back to when a record of survey is required. Record of survey is required based on 8762 of the Professional Land Surveyors Act. You can Google this. This is Business and Professionals Code. It's California statute law, PLS Act, Professional Land Surveyors Act. So here we go. Except as provided in Subdivision B, to make a field survey in conformity with the practice of land surveying, the licensed land surveyor or pre-82 licensed civil engineer may file with the county surveyor in the county in which the field survey was made a record of survey, notwithstanding Subdivision A. After making a field survey in conformity with the practices of land surveying, the licensed land surveyor or pre-82 shall file with the county surveyor in the county in which the field survey was made a record of survey. See that right there? Shall. That's the key. Shall file the county surveyor in the county in which the field survey was made a record of survey relating to land boundaries or property lines in the field survey if the field survey discloses any of the following. So there you go. That's kind of the clauses there, legal implications that, shall is pretty. Think of the Ten Commandments, thou shalt not. Those are commandments. The word shall is you must, you will, this shall be done. If the field survey discloses any of the following: material evidence or physical change, which in whole or in part does not appear on any subdivision map, official map, or record of survey previously recorded or properly filed in the office of the county recorder or county surveying department, or map or survey record maintained by the Bureau of Land Management. So material evidence or physical change. Material evidence would be you find a pipe, you find an iron pipe out at a property corner near your site, and there's no record of it. There's no the subdivision map didn't set any corners on the subdivision map, didn't show them. There's no record of survey of it. There's no parcel map. There's no anything showing this iron pipe that you found out there near the property corner. Um, that's material evidence that didn't appear on any of those maps that I just talked about. Now, what's physical change? Physical change is it was supposed to be a hub. It was supposed to be a 2x2 redwood hub with a tack and a brass tag, PLS 2897. You get out there, you find an iron pipe 2897. You know that's kind of the gray area. How about if you find a pipe different LS number? That would be physical change. Um, it could also be material evidence because it doesn't show up on a map, I believe. Uh, or it can be physical change in the sense that it's in a different position. What if it's 8/10 of a foot off? That's that's physical change. The record of survey map that's on file didn't call for it to be 8/10 off. So what's going on there? Okay, so that leads into material discrepancy. Material discrepancy with the information contained in any subdivision map, official map, or record of survey previously recorded or filed in the office of the county recorder or county survey department, or any map survey record maintained with the BLM, the United States. For purpose of this subdivision, a material discrepancy is limited to a material discrepancy in the position of points or lines or in dimensions. So that means if you go out there and you find you get this subdivision map and you find that the centerline monument is supposed to be 100 feet between these two subdivision monuments. You go out there and you measure it with your total station, and you say, what the heck? Why do I have 98.75 feet? It's supposed to be 100 feet. Uh-oh, what's going on out there? That's a material discrepancy in the position of points or lines and, well, the dimensions, because the dimensions don't match up. So you got to file a record of survey for that. Okay, let's do number 3. Evidence that by reasonable analysis might result in materially alternate positions of lines or points shown on any subdivision map, official map, or record of survey, etc., etc. So this one means that by reasonable analysis, it might result in materially alternate positions. So what does that alternate positions means? Let me show you guys an example. One surveyor's interpretation of how he's going to resolve a map can be completely different than another survey. By reasonable analysis, look at these record maps. Let me just look at that one. Map of Larkspur. Look, no monuments, no nothing. Look at these curves too. They're gonna be a pain in the butt. What if your lot is lot 1? Block O, lot 1. Good luck. Good luck. I would make sure you get enough money in the budget for that. Hopefully there's a record of survey here already. Someone has done that work, or someone has resolved this block here. But let's say there's no record of survey of this whole block. That would be what I would call, by reasonable analysis, it might result in materially alternate positions of lines or points. It may not be, whatever that. They don't even give me a distance here. Well, let's say it's this one. Let's say this curve here is 48.5, and this is column 213. The distance here, it's probably not going to be 213 just by looking at this old map from 1887. It looks really pretty. I really like that. I like this artwork here, and this map looks good. It's legible, but it's probably going to end up, one surveyor's interpretation of this is probably not going to be the same as the next guy's. So that would be number 3. the location, relocation, establishment, reestablishment, or retracement of one or more points or lines not shown on any subdivision map, official map, or record of survey, the positions of which are not ascertainable from an inspection of the subdivision map, official map, or record of survey. So that, again, that's if you find, let's say you go out here and there happens to be two centerline bonds on King Street, or let's say there's a 1-inch iron pipe right here in the center line of King Street. Let's say there's a 1-inch iron pipe at this intersection of Magnolia and King Street. Okay, well, that, first of all, that didn't show up in on this subdivision map, so um, you know, you've located that would be material evidence as well. Uh, but basically what this one is saying is if you found, okay, let's start from the beginning. So the location of one or more points that aren't shown on any subdivision map. Okay, so basically if when you set property corners here, if you're setting new corners, let's say you're setting new corners on lot 2, that's, you need to file record of survey because you've located one or more points or lines. Well, there's obviously lines shown on here, but you're probably going to resolve these lines and change. I mean, there's no bearings here, so you're going to put bearings on your survey. So that's one or more points or lines not shown on a subdivision map, official map, or record of survey. Okay, you relocate the relocation of these lines. Let's say there was a map, and let's say you there was points here and you put them back, um, or they got moved. So that one's kind of ambiguous because sometimes we would file a corner record for that. If we a construction corner record, if these were blown out, if we relocated these, that I don't think that's really means the like relocation like you're moving them, but that's like maybe like you relocated, like you found them again maybe. Because again, you could file a corner record. Corner record is a talk about it maybe in another video. Corner record is a lesser difficult map to do, but it's less requirements. But it's a map you can file with a county recorder, and that you can just reference these centerline bonds if they were there. Okay, let's continue. The establishment, reestablishment, or retracement of one or more points. So that's kind of also it's pretty also in this in 1 and 2. It kind of touches a little bit on 1 and 2 as well. If you're setting property corners, if you find property corners out here that haven't been on a map, if you find original bonds that aren't shown on this map, you got to file record of survey. That's 4. Here it is, 5 again. This is the touches again on the setting of property corners. Points are lines set during the performance of a field survey of any parcel described, any deed or any instrument or title recorded in the county recorder's office not shown on a subdivision map, official map, or record of survey. Okay, so that's if you want us to resolve your boundary lines and you want us to set property corners, and if there's no record of survey already of the property corner, of the property, excuse me, and if the subdivision map, likely if it's anywhere from this date, 1887, to maybe 1940 or 50, it's probably going to be a record of survey, especially if it shows no monuments here. And yeah, and if you have a meets and bounds description, and you want to set property corners, and there's been no record of survey, no parcel map that shows your property, it's going to be a record of survey. So that is when a record of survey is required. Okay, so let's recap again. We talked about why it takes so long, and you can see, look at this map preparation that I did. I went all the way around here, found these boundary monuments, these dark circles. The dark circles, solid circles, usually mean found monuments. I got a triangle there, that's a found monument. And the open circles are usually the points that we set. Set this corner here, set that corner here. So sometimes you got 3 days in the field, 8 to 10 hour days in the field, setting, finding boundary monuments and setting monuments. Total 3 days. You got maybe a full day or two in the office resolving them. So that's quite a bit of time. And then you have the fee, the fee that it costs the county surveyor to review this thing. In Sonoma County, it's $914. In other counties, Marin County is 664. Alameda, it's 500. Contra Costa's 600 something. So that's extra money right there. And then we talked about, what are you doing uh, if your property's over here? What are you doing way down here on mine? Well, it's because your property happens to be adjoining this guy here. This subdivision, this parcel map here happens to be next to mine. So I need to get this one first so I can get my basis of bearings and get over here and start searching for something close to here. Okay, and touched on why it costs so much, why it takes so long, what am I doing, and when it is required. When it is required. All right. So I hope that video was quite informative to the property owners, and I hope you guys have a better understanding of what's a record of survey. All right, thank you very much.